Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here this morning um, for our organic subcommittee meeting. If you don't know me, my name is John Fisher with MassDEP. I am our Deputy Division Director for Solid Waste with MassDEP. Also with me, Becky Ferguson is here this morning. Becky is in our Municipal Waste Reduction Branch, does a lot of work with food waste programs with municipalities. This morning, this is part of a continuing series of organic subcommittee meetings where we're looking at and thinking about MassDEP's Organics Action Plan. If you didn't participate in our last meeting in April, I'll just give you a quick recap of what we're doing, and then we'll dive into things here. Let me just put up our agenda here today. We'll be really focusing today on food waste prevention and reduction, as well as food donation rescue programs. We have a couple of external speakers who I asked to join us this morning, which I thought would be really helpful in giving some context and setting the stage for some of our discussions here this morning. I'll introduce Rose and Artie in a few minutes. And then after that, we'll be really focusing on a partial review of our Organics Action Plan strategies, and really, again, focusing on what we can do to prevent and reduce food waste and to enhance and foster more food donation and rescue programs. We are in the kind of at the midway point of a 10-year planning process here in Massachusetts that's set out in our 2030 Solid Waste Master Plan. And one of the things we committed to doing in that Solid Waste Master Plan when we got to 2025 is to do a mid-course review of our implementation of the Solid Waste Master Plan, to review what we've done, what remains to be done, where have we achieved progress, where are we falling short of our goals, and what can we do to try to improve on our progress in the remaining 5 years of this 10-year plan. So this meeting here today is another step in that discussion, in that process. And again, really focusing on aspects of the plan related to what we think of as the top of the hierarchy. I do want to go through a couple of background slides. This may be a little bit redundant with things that Artie or Rose talk about, but just to set the stage a little bit here, we come at this from a solid waste management standpoint. We're looking at our solid waste management infrastructure and capacity and how we can make better use of the materials we generate as waste. But we also have a companion problem of food insecurity across the U.S. and in Massachusetts. We are certainly not immune to that. Where we have a significant part of our population that's food insecure, not getting the food they need on a daily basis. So these twin problems of large amounts of food waste as well as food insecurity. These are all slides, by the way, from ReFed, which has some really interesting data if you're not familiar with them. So this is national data, but I think these trends by and large hold true for Massachusetts as well. So this slide looks at the total value of surplus food across the U.S. And you can see the overwhelming portion of that surplus food is disposed of as food waste. Small portion is donated, slightly larger portion is what they call recycled, which is composting, anaerobic digestion, things like that. But most of this lost value is disposed of as waste. So it's a lot of waste, and it's a big opportunity for us. This is another interesting slide from ReFed. Looks at, where across the food life cycle that waste is happening, from farms to manufacturers to consumer-facing businesses to us individually in our homes. And my takeaway from this is there's significant waste throughout the food cycle. All of these portions are significant and worth focusing on. Our attention in Massachusetts has really been focused on kind of the middle portion of these activities so far, but as we go, we're starting to shift our focus more towards the right of the spectrum, more to smaller businesses, and then to food that's coming from us as residents in our homes. And then I thought the slide was interesting as well. The takeaway here for me is that 80% of the wasted food is from perishable items. Looking across the produce in the upper left and going around clockwise to prepared foods, dairy and eggs, and over on the bottom left, frozen foods. So just kind of a few quick slides to set the context for what we're going to talk about here today. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing this presentation. And I'm going to introduce Rose Forrest. So Rose is with Sodexo. And if you don't know Sodexo, they're a major food service company in businesses and institutions nationally, but in Massachusetts, they do a lot of work in Massachusetts. And their work kind of got raised to my attention, in particular, the work that they're doing to really focus on upfront prevention and reduction of wasted food. So Rose is here this morning. I am going to share Rose's slides. Let me do that quick, make sure I have that. Okay, can you guys see this all right? Yeah, okay, super. So Rose, I'm gonna turn it over to you and just let me know if you'd like me to advance here and I'll just move things along.
Thank you so much, Sean, and thank you everybody for allowing the time today to speak. So if we go to the next slide, I just wanted to talk through our agenda for today and our waste reduction efforts with Sodexo. So what we'll be focusing on in the next 15 minutes or so is menu planning on how that reduces waste and pre and post forecasting. Lean path, which is something that's utilized at the majority of our accounts across the nation. Food recovery programs that we have instituted in New England, specifically in Massachusetts, composting, recycling, campus gardens, and some of the gleaning projects that we're part of, our green restaurant certifications, and then some of our challenges moving forward. And if you go to the next slide, I wanted to start with menu planning. So in 2020, it was identified through looking at where our carbon is being produced. It's mainly being produced through, as a company, through our menu planning. And so we look to reduce our carbon emissions by 50% by incorporating plant-based. And that's done in a number of ways. That's either eliminating meat or incorporating more vegetables into meat dishes to reduce the amount of meat that's being served. So currently we're at 50% plant-based, and we do a lot of training with our team members to ensure that it's being perceived and being produced in a way that's acceptable by our students. We work a lot with the Humane Society and have trained thousands of chefs through that, through those courses to utilize plant-based techniques. And then we also menu plan through a system called Drive. So that's our menu, our recipe system, menu planning system, allergen system. And also through there, we can forecast. So our chefs have to go to advance to the next day to be able to plan. They have to ensure that they put their forecasting in and their post-production in. So before waste even happens, they have to look back at the last time that they ran this menu, denote what was left over, and then what they'll reduce moving forward to the next time that it runs. And then also we've developed state programs. So every state in New England plus New York has a Sodexo run state program. So Massachusetts is Mass Impact, Rhode Island is Road Impact, Vermont is Vermont Course. I'm sorry, Vermont First, there's Maine Course for Maine. So with these programs, each one has a mission statement, which aligns with reducing waste, utilizing food for its best purpose, and in purchasing local and sustainable products as well as diverse products. We've developed, through those state programs, metrics to measure through Power BI. So we take all of our velocity reporting and invoices, and that goes into the Power BI system. So what we've been able to pull out of that is for the state of Massachusetts, just in a 12-month period. So this past month that just passed, counting as the last month in that 12-month period, we've purchased 7% of our food within the state of Massachusetts for the Mass Impact Program, which equates to over $3 million worth of product within state purchased, locally sourced, and then 20% within New England, which equates to $8 million within the 6 states. If we go to the next slide, I wanted to talk a little bit about Lean Path. So Lean Path is a system which is incorporated in about 99% of our accounts right now. There are very, very minimal accounts that don't have it, and those are seasonal in conferences for the most part. So it's a scale, essentially, that's in our dining locations, so mostly in the back of the house, which measures pre- and post-consumer waste. So the way that we measure post-consumer waste is it'll come out of our dish return area. So if it goes on the conveyor belt, essentially, our dish team will weigh that waste, and then pre-consumer, our culinarians will weigh that waste. And it takes about 30 seconds to do a transaction on the Lean Path scale. Our team will go put the product on the scale and very quickly go through the prompts of the tare weight of the pan, where the product came from. So if it came from the pizza station or the grill station, what the product is, and then it'll tally out the impact of that. So the cost of that, the carbon emission reduction of that, if that was wasted every day for a year, what the cost and impact of that would be. And then we just pulled out some metrics of since the inception of the programs from 2016 to date for a quarter period. So you can see that it has a really large impact when utilized consecutively. If you go to the next slide, I wanted to talk about our food recovery programs. So all of the accounts in New England have now been paired, and they have been for the past few years, with a food recovery partner. So these food recovery partners are entities like Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, Food Rescue US, Havens Harvest, and then we work a lot with on-campus food pantries. So we try to minimize the amount of waste before it even leaves the campus, and then secondarily, we look to find homes for that food off campus. We've also done a lot with the Move for Hunger program. So we actually have 46 universities that partnered during this close down season. So this last month of May, we did a huge food drive across 46 accounts in all of New England plus New York. And we've to date collected close to 3,000 pounds of food, which is going to on-campus pantries and shelters and different food rescues. So that's another way we're collaborating to try to capture that waste as it's coming out of our dorm rooms before it hits the landfill. We've also instituted in a number of our accounts, Bridgewater being one of them, Framingham State another one, a text alert system. So when food comes back from catered events, when there's surplus product, we'll text alert whoever signs on. So they have to opt to sign into it. So we're not just text blasting everybody. And then they'll be alerted to the fact that there's surplus food, and they have a time associated to be able to get that food before it goes to compost. We've also worked a lot with the Swipe Out Hunger Foundation. So it's a match for match for meal swipes for food insecure students. And we've embedded this this ethos of food recovery into those state programs that I spoke about. And if we go to the next slide, we've also done a lot with our accounts and a lot for customer facing. So for us, for universities, it would be our students around composting, recycling. We run 3 major events, cross-divisional. So those are with K through 12 universities and hospitals. And this is its 3rd year of inception, where we run something called So Local in September, Seafood Month in October. We're also working to do Wasteless Week also in October, which incorporates composting, recycling, and education for our students. And in hospitals, it would be in the dining locations. And then in April, we do Earth Week. So an entire week of events centered around local sourcing, sustainable actions, waste reduction. So we do one day with Earth Week, and then one day in October for Wasteless Week, completely centered around reducing food waste through tabling events, through social media, and through education. And if we go to the next slide, we work a lot with campus gardens. So at Bridgewater State University, we work with their permaculture garden. We work very closely with their Cubes project team, which is a sustainable action team, which partners with a university in Germany. And we sit and advise on every quarter that the students report back on. We've worked with the permaculture garden to produce compost that goes to their facility, as well as coffee grounds. And then we've done vertical farm tours with them. And we've also worked with the Babylon system. So just an example of that is this picture from Dean College. And ultimately, the reason we do this is because it helps our students and faculty understand the circle of food, which helps them essentially waste less, right? If you see where your food is coming from, you see it grown, you get to understand, and you're educated more on food, you appreciate it more, and you waste less. The next slide is very quickly some of the gleaning projects which we've been involved in. Stexo is currently in a grant which was actually just accepted from the Danone Foundation around gleaning projects, and also the utilization of cover crops. So that grant will help Commonwealth Kitchen purchase some equipment, which will help better produce specific products that are gleaned and utilizing cover crops like field peas. So we've worked with Commonwealth Kitchen on 3 major projects prior to that grant proposal, one being butternut squash. So we utilized all gleaned butternut squash from Plainfield Farm in Massachusetts. And we committed to, I believe it was 5,000 pounds of soup, which was then sold and utilized in our universities, in our healthcare, in our K through 12. We did the same thing with a marinara, a gleaned tomato project. And we worked on a pickle project with them. We also have done a lot with surplus products, specifically from farms in Rhode Island. So we've worked with Farrellbrink Farm, which we were alerted to a surplus of thousands of pounds of potatoes. So we were able to utilize that product and turn it around very quickly so it wasn't turned back into the soil or wasted. We work with Farm Fresh Rhode Island for our accounts in Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts to now proactively crop plan and understand where and when waste is happening. So we know historically waste happens on potato farms, on squash farms, on tomato farms. So we've worked those products into our Harvest of the Month program. We've pulled our velocity from the data that we have, and we're working to produce a diced potato product, because that's our highest volume product, so that we can move those potatoes proactively instead of being alerted to a surplus. If we go to the next slide, we've very recently started to be more active in the Green Restaurant certification. We're certified now at Bridgewater State, Curry College, UMass Boston, Framingham. Those are just for the state of Massachusetts. We're certified outside of Massachusetts at other universities, but that's specifically for Massachusetts. Part of that certification is making sure and proving that we're recycling and composting at those accounts. That's a minimum, as well as no polystyrene. So we're very committed to the reduction of waste and being able to essentially utilize that as a point of pride in our accounts. And if you go to the next slide, speaking of points of pride, we work a lot too within our community. So pre-COVID, we as a company worked very, very closely with the Pine Street Inn in Boston, and that tapered out after COVID, but we've really, worked closely over the past, I'd say 7 months to re-engage that partnership. So we work with them on a number of commitments. Our chefs go every month. We have a rotation of chefs that teach at the Pine Street Inn. We also help produce meals and serve meals. But for our waste reduction efforts, something that we're really proud of is we were able to collaborate and find for this class, you see the picture, and that's actually Kevin Moken from UMass Boston. He teaches a front of the house like dining service class, and you can see that they're using styrofoam cups and just paper plates and whatever they had. So we were able to work with our accounts and get some surplus catering supplies. So we've provided them with china plates and glassware and silverware to have a more unified approach to their teaching. So we're really proud of that. And if you go to the next slide, I know, John, you had asked us to talk about some of our challenges and expectations moving forward. So some of our expectations moving forward is we've partnered with a company called Eternity. So that helps carbon label our menus, so we can make the best decisions on what we're menuing and the impact, and our students can make the best decisions on what they're eating. And some of our challenges are creating additional training materials for our frontline team to be able to work with different education levels and language levels to be able to convey that in a uniform way, what our sustainable practices are, what our local sourcing practices are, who we work with, the story behind Harvesting Good or some of those other partners that we work with, and how we convey that message through our frontline team. So that's a challenge that we're working through. We're working through our marketing team to be able to produce that material throughout the course of the summer and roll that out through our company-wide trainings when our team members come back in the fall. We're working through additional partnerships cross-divisionally. It's always a challenge when you try to get K through 12, hospitals, universities, business and industry all in one place, and then align on sustainable practices in New England. But we've put something together called the New England Growth Collaborative, and we meet quarterly, and we have subcommittees that we push that work forward in New England. And that is, in a nutshell, what Sodexo is doing around waste reduction.
Great, thank you, Rose. That's some great work. Really good to see everything that's going on. I have two questions for you to start, and the first one, I think this is okay to ask you, or I think it's okay to answer it, but tell me if it's not. Can you talk about sort of the number of accounts, kind of the breadth of entities that you work with in Massachusetts, kind of across the board? You mentioned a few of them, and you mentioned some of the sectors, but would you be able to speak to kind of like how many entities Sodexo's working with in Massachusetts?
I would have to look back. I know within New England, it's about 46. In Massachusetts, if I had to guess without looking, that's just universities, 46. So between hospitals, healthcare, K through 12, it's got to be close to 100.
Yeah. Okay. That's helpful. And then one other question, I'm just going to bounce back to the lean path slide for a second. Over on the lower left, you have your prevention number and the recorded food waste. Was just trying to understand what kind of what those metrics mean exactly. My read of it, and maybe you can tell me if I got this right, is that the prevention looks like it's maybe close to 50% prevention. You have about a million pounds of prevention and then about 1.4 million pounds of food waste. Am I reading that right?
That's exactly right.
Okay. I think that's really interesting just because of that's a really big number and a really big percentage that was prevented.
And our target goal is 50% waste reduction. So we're teetering around that number all the time.
Great. Okay. Thanks. Becky, do we have questions in the chat?
Kendall Christensen had a couple questions. One was about challenges, which I think you've addressed, Rose. But then another question about how would you characterize your promotion and marketing efforts? Are they active? Are they passive?
It's a little of both, honestly. So we've, through the state programs in Massachusetts and Rhode Island specifically, we've identified a need to be more aggressive with that marketing. So about 2 weeks ago, we've assembled the entire marketing team in the region, which comprises of about 15 people. And we focused on 6 work streams, those being social, those being Adobe links that go out to clients, trainings for our frontline team, trainings for our managers. And so it has been passive, and we're looking to make that a more aggressive training around sustainable efforts and food waste reduction efforts.
And one last question that just came up in the chat is the 50% reduction objective relative to this current level of 1.4 million pounds?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then it looks like those are the questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. I'm going to stop that sharing here. I wanted to also mention, if anyone wants to raise your hand to comment, you can feel free to do that as well, and we'll try to catch that along the way as we go. All right. I need to do one thing here behind the scenes. Give me a moment. Just need to open Artie's presentation. Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit now. I'm going to turn to Artie Croce, who's with Roach Brothers Supermarkets. That's Roach Brothers was, I think, one of the first supermarket organizations we worked with in Massachusetts way back when. Has a long history with food waste prevention, reduction, and diversion. And I'm going to turn to Artie to speak about Roach Brothers' work with food rescue and donation in particular. So I'm going to see if I can get the right presentation here. Give me a moment. Can you guys see that okay?
I can.
Okay, super. All right, I will turn it to you, Artie, and just let me know when you want me to advance here, and we'll work our way through the slides.
Sure, you can go to the next slide, John. Thank you.
Okay.
And Rose, really good job on your presentation. You really knocked it out of the park. So it's tough going second.
Thank you, Artie.
So just so I can just introduce myself to everybody. My name is Artie Croce. I'm the Director of Operations for Roach Brothers. It's tough seeing everybody on the call, but hopefully you guys have heard of our supermarket. Hopefully you guys shop there. Hopefully, maybe if you don't after this call, you will. And I hopefully I can just educate you guys a little bit on what happens at Roach Brothers and in the supermarket business. We are a family-owned supermarket onto a third-generation owner at this point. And we've had 3 pillars our whole lives, and it's been focused on quality, service, and the community. And anyone that has a Roach Brothers in your neighborhood or in the surrounding neighborhoods, you benefit from us, because Roach Brothers we're owned by the best family in Massachusetts. And you can't come, like, if you talk about like Market Basket, they're an amazing operator with the worst family. We are great operators with the best family. That's pretty much how I can describe us. But that's our 3 pillars. And if you've been in our stores, you've seen our great quality. You've hopefully had great service, and we do take care of the community. And I just want to thank you guys for having me, because Spoonfuls asked if I would speak, and I, when they ask, I'm a big fan of them, and you'll hear about that today. So, and I want to thank John and the MassDEP for having me. So you can go to the next slide. So why food donation matters. I think if you guys are not retailers and you haven't been in the supermarket business, you guys would be shocked at the amount of shrink we have in a supermarket. If you come shopping, nobody wants to buy the last package of steak, the last muffin, the last apple. You have to have full, abundant displays. And our shrink you'd be shocked. And I think you may be shocked about the amount of volume stores do and the amount of volume that shrink produces. But also to be a part of one of our pillars is helping the community and donating our day-old products and donating some of our products that we can't sell, I think is really important. So the last event I went to, they told me it was 1 in 3 insecurities. John, you had 1 in 7, but whether it's 1 in 3, 1 in 7, or 1 in 100, it's still a problem. But when I started this operations job 8 years ago, it was 1 in 9. So maybe that number's wrong, but at least it was higher. The one thing I've been with this company for 30 years. I started when I was a teenager. I never left. It's the only job I've had as a teenager and adult. And you know, it's amazing what this company has done for people. And I think when you start to hear what we're going to talk about, maybe I'll answer questions at the end, but you'll be pretty impressed. So you can go to the next slide. So when I came up through the company and I put in for the operations job, before I was an operator, I was a director of shrink, because our shrink in a supermarket business it can be high, right? So my goal was to lower it. But then we partnered with Spoonfuls in 2017. Now, Spoonfuls rescues product from our stores 5 days a week. But we've always had people to do that as far as they'd pick up day-old bakery, but they wouldn't pick up everything. And Spoonfuls has been the partner to do more. And what I think is important, and what I'm going to mention, is the stores that they pick up in, because you'll be shocked at when you start hearing some of these areas and how many people and how they help the communities. So we have 20 stores, but they're only picking up in 14 as of now. So Cambridge, we all know what Cambridge is. Medfield, it's a beautiful town. Weston, one of the most expensive towns to live in Massachusetts. Downtown Crossing, if you don't know where that is, it's the center of Boston. Millis, another great town. Natick, we've heard of Natick, right? If you haven't heard of Natick, look up Doug Flutie. Needham Roach and Needham Sudbury Farms. And so the other thing I should tell you about Roche Brothers is we have 20 stores, 3 different names. So we do own Roche Brothers, we own the Brothers Marketplace, and we own Sudbury Farms. So when we have 2 stores in Needham, and Needham is a very affluent town. And then they also go to Watertown. Wellesley is, again, it's kind of like Weston. West Roxbury, Westboro, Westwood, and Sudbury. And just think of those towns and the amount of people they're helping. And we're not touching stores. We do have a couple of stores in the city, but these are really affluent towns that we're helping the community. And it's not just those towns, it's the other towns surrounding it. Okay, John. So our partnership with Spoonfuls, they rescue product that other rescue companies haven't done. And what I mean about that is any church or somebody that's trying to help will pick up the day-old bakery because it doesn't need to be refrigerated. Spoonfuls picks up produce, which many people are. If we have 1 in 3 insecurities and they'll eat anything, but now we're going to get them really healthy food. They pick up dairy. They pick up frozen meat. They pick up our bakery. They pick up our grocery items. And if you've been in our stores, you would see that we have great kitchens. And I'll tell you that Roche Brothers has better, when we talk about quality, we have better standards than other supermarkets. So I'm going to give you an example. If we have milk and it's going out of code in 4 days, we pull it off the shelf because we want to give the people that are buying it time to drink it at home. So if you can imagine, without Spoonfuls, we're dumping that milk down the drain, and boy, it feels terrible because we know it's good. Because we can only utilize so much in our own stores. So those items that they're picking up is so important. Their staff is trained in food safety. They pick up our product in a refrigerated truck Monday through Friday. And this is one thing that Spoonfuls gives us that nobody else gives us, is real-time tracking of donations, which every month I get a report with every store and every department and how much pounds that we've given to them. So why is that important? One, we could say, boy, we're really heavy here. Or another store is not so heavy and say, where did your shrink go? And so then if I think if a store is too heavy, we can talk about their shrink. We can figure out why they're heavy and if we can get them better. And if a store is really light, I ask where that product's going, because again, I started this conversation off by saying how much shrink there is in a supermarket, and it's quite a bit. All right, John. All right, so to talk about volume and impact, from 2019 to 2023, and keep in mind that they don't go to all of our stores. And from 2019 to 2023, I think they went to 8, or it was started off as 8, and then they went to 10. We averaged 750,000 pounds of food recovered. 2024, they picked up more of our stores, and we donated almost 900,000 pounds of food to them. In 2025, this year, they're now going to 14 stores, and we're on pace to doing over 1 million pounds. I mean, that's a lot, right? It's a lot coming out of our stores. And if we didn't have them, this product would be going into either like going to a farm or going into the landfill. And if you think about it, we have at minimum of 130-yard dumpsters have been diverted by help with the support from Spoonfuls. So where does the product go? It goes to, it's picked up 5 days a week, like I said, first thing in the morning, and they will fill up their trucks. They'll come to Roche Brothers and a few other vendors, and they'll go to churches, schools, after-school programs, group homes, shelters, senior centers, and more. I will tell you, when I had this job back in 2017, I said, boy, I have to figure out what they do, because it wasn't making a lot of sense. Because if you think of like a food donation, you think of the Greater Boston Food Bank, a massive building, huge warehouse, big sign, and all these big trucks going in. What I thought was important was, I said, boy, I have to see their operation. And I think I went to like Brighton or Brookline or some part of the city. And listen, I'm a country guy. I live in the South, South Shore. I live in a town called Middleborough, and there's nothing close to a city. So I go into this Brighton area. I'm expecting to find this huge warehouse. And what I found was a door with a small sign. I go down, and it's like, it was just a small office. And I'm like, where is all this product? But what we did is I did a ride along, and we picked up a truck, and I spent the whole day with them. And I went to all these different stores, including mine, and we picked up product. And then they filled up this refrigerated truck. And by the end of the day, it was empty, because these kids are so good at what they do. And that ride along was impactful. And to see where it goes, that was very impactful. John, you can go to the next one. So their teams are very good at sorting the product on the truck. And I got to watch this, and the product is refrigerated. And the disruption to my stores is nothing. It's really, what happens in my stores is everyone will cull the stand. And what that means is they go through their products, the stuff they can't sell. They put it in banana boxes. They store it in their back rooms until there's an announcement made, and they say Spoonfuls is coming. And when Spoonfuls backs up, everybody goes to the back room, and they fill up their truck with whatever they have. And listen, ideally, we get better at shrink as an operator, and we're not giving them all this product. I've said to Spoonfuls, I said, listen, my best day is when you guys show up and I say, boy, I don't have anything. But that's not reality in my world. It really isn't. But they pick up the product, and there's food safety in mind the entire time, because we're not going to give them rotten product. We're going to give them stuff that's not looks perfect, right? And I've often said about our business is, if you owned your own farm, or you had a farm or a garden, and you grew a tomato, you'd be like, Mom, this is amazing, even if it had a little blemish. But if you go to a supermarket and it doesn't look perfect, you're not buying it. It's just, that's a fact. So, okay, John. So what this does for people in our stores, this is what I think you should know how important this is. It makes them feel better. Nobody wants to waste this food. And if you remember correctly, I started off saying there's 1 in 3 insecurities, the numbers 1 in 7 to 1 in 3, right? And people know that. And if they have to throw away food, it makes them feel terrible. And it also gives them an out. So one of the quotes from our store manager, Needham, he said, "We're proud to know our surplus food is helping families in our own communities." That was the store manager, Needham. And when I talk about how it increase associate engagement and morale, they just feel better, and everybody would rather give back, and to the food pantries, nonprofits, and all these areas where I said they go. Go ahead, John. So challenges and opportunities. I would love for Spoonfuls to come to all 20 stores, but they're a nonprofit organization. And if you know anything about nonprofits, they don't make a tremendous amount of money. They have to pay their people to do this work. When they came to us in 2017, I thought I was doing everything to finish their mission. Like, they want to help people. I have food. They pick up the food. That's it. But it really costs them a lot of funding to put a truck on the road. And if they relied on only volunteers, it wouldn't work. So they have to pay their people. And I have said, hey, when are you guys going to start coming to all of our stores? And they continue to need to raise money to put on those routes to make sure that they can function and make it work. And it is a lot of work. And I think one of the things that Spoonfuls, I wish they did in the beginning, is they could have showed us how much value they have for us, as opposed to thinking we have more value to them. And that's why it's a great partnership. But I've talked to them a few times about how they look at their business, because what they do for us is incredible. Go ahead, John. So future goals, ideally, I would like our shrink to be less. And right now, our shrink is in the industry is probably one of the best in maybe the country. Our shrink is, we put a lot of good parameters in place to make sure our shrink isn't great. I mean, our shrink isn't high, and we have kitchens. I mentioned that. So a lot of times, if we can't sell product, we can, because it's still good, we can put it into the kitchen. But we still got to continue to make things better. I already mentioned I want Spoonfuls to go to the rest of our stores. But the one thing I think is really important is for other retailers to see the value from Spoonfuls. When I went on that ride along, it was amazing how many vendors, other retailers, did not treat them with the same respect as how we treat them. They would pull up into a back dock. They would get an attitude from the receiver, and at the end of the day, they were doing so much work for them. But I think it's important for every other retailer and anyone that could partner with them to understand it. There was a company called Too Good to Go, which is great. They do a lot of great things, but they're for profit, and they've been after us for a while, and they're trying to help people in need as well, but so are we. And this, when you start doing things for profit and putting money out there, the people that we may be helping may go away if we ever went to that. And this is why I think Spoonfuls does such a good job. And we've been always trying to help the community. So we were not looking to, Spoonfuls helps us not create so much work. And anyone else that comes to our door that is trying to make this work for us does not have the same model as these guys do, and it would create more work for us. So go ahead, John. So I hope I educated you guys. I hope this made sense. I hope you guys maybe brightens your gives you more a clear idea of what we do, and what Spoonfuls has done with us, and the impact they have and the impact that we have. And talk about the impact, and I didn't realize how much impact we had as working with Spoonfuls. But that day I did a ride along, as I went to a church, I went to an after-school program, I went to a group home. I was getting hugs from everybody saying, "Oh my God, you guys are amazing!" And so it just goes to show you that people need us, and we need them as well. So I will take any questions if anybody has anything.
Great, thank you, Artie. That's really, really great to hear about that work and all the results that you've achieved. Becky, anything from the chat?
There are no questions, but Joni from Spoonfuls put in a very nice open invitation if anybody wants to go see what they're doing. But no questions.
Are there anyone else want to raise your hand, or happy to unmute people if that'd be helpful? Heather, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. These presentations have been fabulous. I guess my more immediate question right now is are you able to take a tax deduction based on like the really detailed reporting and your like your shrink scanning procedures?
Yeah. So not so much on our shrink scanning procedures, because we do scan shrink, and we have an idea what we're giving them, but we also at times when we scan shrink, we're not exactly we don't have a way to say this is going to spoonfuls and this is going to the barrels, right? But there is a tax deduction that we can take, and it's more for the family, not so much for the business. And we didn't recognize that for a few years until they said, hey, you guys are not taking this tax break that we could give you. And it wasn't until I took this job and then they mentioned it to us. But yes, there is a tax break. They give us the form. They let us know, but here's how many pounds you donated. Here's a dollar value that you can take as a tax break. But so to answer your question is yes, but that wasn't our driving. That was never our drive to partner with them.
Oh, for sure. Not the driving force, but an added bonus, I guess.
It absolutely 100%.
Yeah.
It absolutely helps, and it's much, and it's better for the family for sure.
Thank you.
It's a great question. So just like I know I can't see a lot of you. I hope you guys do shop in our stores, and I hope that you realize that we may come across a little bit more expensive, but the amount of money that we take care of when we take care of the community, and we take care of the churches and the after school programs and the little league fields, and all these other places, it's all based on having really good partnerships.
Well, thank you, Artie, and thank you, Rose. You guys are welcome to stick around here if you like, or if you need to get going. That's okay too.
John, there's one more question in the chat for Artie that just
Okay.
came up, if we can do that. Alex says, thanks for the great presentation. The question is, how is the remainder of packaged food handled after Loving Spoonfuls comes through? Is it sent to depackaging or composting?
So it depends. The last thing we want to do is have something hit the barrel. It occasionally it will, if we can't sell it, but we have a kitchen. So if there's, all right, let me take this another step back. The stores that do not have spoonfuls, because we have 6 of them, they would do their best to utilize the shrink in the store, but if they can't, unfortunately, it does make it to it goes into a barrel, and then it's either sent. A lot of times it's sent to a farm.
And that's it. I don't see any other questions. Thanks.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again, Artie.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to shift gears kind of more to a discussion phase here, and I'm just going to pop a quick slide up here to share a few questions and thoughts. Okay, so some of the questions as I was thinking about what I want to get out of this discussion this morning, and what I want to hear from people about is what can we do to increase food waste prevention, to prevent more food waste, or to reduce more wasted food. We heard, some pretty, I think pretty compelling data from Rose about their program, and they're tracking through Lean Path. Certainly, a really significant opportunity there. So what can we do, to try to grow that? What can we do to foster more food donation and rescue. One of the slides I showed at the beginning for background showed what a small portion of our total wasted food nationally goes to donation. I'm just going to see if I can jump back to that real quick. So there's little, whatever color that is, teal, up at the top, that 2% or so of the total surplus food is donated. Now, certainly not all surplus food should be donated, but that's a really small percentage. So certainly opportunity to do more. There's certainly more valuable food that's not getting captured and going to those in need. So what can we do about that? When we're working here at MassDEP, we always try to think what can we do? What's within the range of our typical work? What's within our authority to do? And then maybe what are things that others can do, and maybe we can work on in kind of more of a partnership vein to work with other organizations to implement programs that maybe we can't do directly, but maybe we can engage with some other organizations. And some of the other questions that I think about is how can we reach businesses more effectively? This has been an ongoing challenge for us in Massachusetts. As you can see, we don't have many food waste generators on the call here today. It's really tough to get people from those businesses to calls and meetings. They're understandably busy running their own businesses. They have lots of other things that are front of mind. So how can we more effectively engage with businesses, kind of get them this information that we think is so compelling, and get them the assistance resources we have and things like that. Where do the greatest opportunities lie? That goes back to some of the slides I showed in terms of what business sectors maybe have the greatest potential in these areas. And then also, how can we reach residents more effectively? Just bouncing back to my prior slides, we can see there's in the right-hand side here, there's a lot of waste happening on the residential level. So that's not kind of the, that works much differently from a donation standpoint, and of course works much differently from a prevention standpoint too. It's not like we're all going to install a lean path tracking system in our homes, but so what can we do more to reach businesses better? What can we do to reach residents better? What are kind of the unrealized opportunities here that we can leverage more progress? I am going to stop sharing my screen to kind of allow us to see each other better, but I'm happy to bounce back to these off and on as we go. I think I saw Carrie's hand first, maybe.
Hi, John. Thank you. Thanks for holding these. These are so important. For those of you who don't know, I'm Carrie Parcell. I'm with the MassDEP Barnstable County as a Municipal Assistance Coordinator for SC1. And we're very, very lucky to have a regional planning authority. I saw that Kristen Pesci was on the call earlier with the Cape Cod Commission. We've been working on a food composting facility here for about 5 or 6 years. And during the COVID pandemic, the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, who is also part my employer, developed a staff member that is a food access coordinator. So they look at programming and access. And I think one of the two thoughts that I had listening to these wonderful conversations and the presentations was that because we have that, I think, Andrea has access to, looking at the schools. We have an active military base here, which I've learned is a lower, has a little bit lower economic salaries as far as, the living wage here on Cape Cod. Access to food pantries, as well as councils on aging and the Council of Churches. She's also able to access the waste reduction project grant through MassDEP. So I think that's one of the things that MassDEP is doing. And I'm wondering if maybe there could be some thought outside of the scope of maybe making this sort of a rotating type grant versus it's, April through June. And maybe it's something that could be accessed as needed as part of a separate grant because there's such a need and there are so many people like Roach Brothers willing to participate in the need throughout our communities. So those are just my thoughts.
Great, great. Thank you, Carrie.
Rotating, that's the word I was looking for, like on a rotating basis.
Yeah, okay. Joni?
Yeah, so thank you so much. This is all terrific to hear. I think the one thought I'm having coming off of an event I attended last week with another retailer who was having not a Roach Brothers store that was having a sustainability fair. They've done this within many of the stores in our footprint and actually had us come in. Was that it was such an impactful, I think, use of time. Everyone in the store, every department showed up at that fair just to kind of learn about um, what happens within their store, what's fit for donation, what can be composted, what's recycled. And the fair actually, which I thought was very cool and something worth modeling in other places, is that the fair actually was modeled after the wasted food scale. So you walked in the room and you learned about prevention right at the top, and then you got to talk to me a little bit about donation. Um, and what I found is that there were lots of folks around the table that had great ideas about how to do better and ensure that more food is donated. Rather than hitting compost when it's still edible. And so one of the things that I heard, which seems so incredibly simple, but I think worth calling out, and I've been talking with everybody about it since I've heard it, is one of the receivers said, when I worked out in produce, the reason that I composted sometimes over taking something back to the receiving area to donate to spoonfuls was because there wasn't a bin in my department. So there is a compost bin in their department. There is not a bin set aside for food recovery. And so they found that in that minute, if it's 2 minutes to walk to the back of the store over Memorial Day weekend when they're understaffed, they're simply not going to do it. And so my wheels started spinning, is there a way to kind of ensure that there is a physical place in each department, every store that works with a food recovery organization that truly makes it easy for those folks who are already so busy to just make it clear what's fit for donation and get it to us if they can.
Mhm. Joni, just to follow up with you a little bit, we heard from Artie, and I know Spoonfuls works with a lot of food retailers. Are there other, like, where do you think the growth opportunities for you lie? Where is kind of the food that you're not getting that you think represents the best opportunity for more donated food?
I think one thing that our partners tell, a couple of things at the moment, actually, just thinking on some emerging needs that we're seeing throughout our network. Prepared foods, cut food is always something that we love and sometimes don't see that much of in our pickups. The other, frankly, are some of those shelf-stable items. We've had a couple of conversations recently with retailers that either were under the assumption that because our emphasis is on fresh and perishable items, that we can't take shelf-stable things, we can. And our, partners, in particular at the moment where food sourcing is just challenging throughout the emergency food system, we're hearing more from our partners that they would value those things. So those are two things just kind of top of mind. I think if there are, and we see this with certain of the brands that we work with, if there are kind of in-brand, in-store rules about what things can be donated. We've got some that, will not donate meat, though we can take it, or they won't donate seafood, though we can take it. It would be terrific, I think, to get just a more widespread standard practice around donating those things and educate folks that it is and it's safe to do it. It can be done safely, and we have partners that could use all of those categories of food.
Yeah. Sure.
Hi, Joni. Amazing work. Love it. I'm wondering, as already mentioned, getting to more of their outlets and other outlets, 20 plus, would Spoonfuls have the capacity to say, what are the bottlenecks? Is it the vehicle, the workers to actually run the logistics? How could we help amplify?
Yeah, I think others that are in a similar business would say similar things, but it's a variety of factors, right? So one is certainly, as already said, the funding to put those trucks on the road, get the people to do the jobs in regions where we are not yet. But the other big thing, I think, truly, and we see this when we're headed into new regions, is food sourcing. So opening the door to partnerships, which is easier to do with brands that we are already working with, tougher to do with those who don't know us yet. Especially smaller grocers. Those are ones that we would love to do more work with smaller grocers. And I think we tend to work with the big brands because we're familiar with them, they're familiar with us. But I think to the extent that, if in your network you have grocery contacts, please absolutely spread the word, put them in touch with us. I would direct people to our website. The inquiry form that lives there is the best place to kind of get started with a conversation with our team. Sometimes it's a matter of adding a store to an existing group, but if it's a region we're not in yet, even if we're not there, we'd like to have a sense for what food is available and what needs exist on the other side of the equation, that we can kind of make those matches between existing food and programs and people in need.
Heather.
Sorry. So that kind of Joni, your comment about there may be like in-store or in-brand restrictions on what the store will feel comfortable donating. And one thing, so I guess I'm wondering about, I love the idea of like kind of having the overall standard, whether it's a checklist, pick list, something about like, here are all the things that, Spoonfuls can take, and, maybe the store like checks off, well, we're going to do this and this and this, but they also see that meat and seafood can be donated, and maybe start to think about, well, what's our reasoning behind why we don't? Is it a liability? Is it, whatever reason it is, just try to kind of burrow down into that to figure out what is the hiccup. And so I guess I started to write something in the chat of like wondering if there's a different procedure for donating like ready to cook items versus like ready to eat items. So just thinking about all the different displays of things that are potentially available, and what kind of thought process might go through a staff person on like, this can be donated, this can't. How do I separate them? How do I put them in designated spots? How challenging is that? So I realize I got all twisted around saying too many things. So I guess trying to talk through the challenges with some of those folks who are resistant or have rules about not donating certain things.
Yeah, and I'll say from my perspective, we've heard from peers in the space too who have had similar challenges. And what would be amazing is for, I think, for some kind of critical mass of food recovery organizations to come together, or for there to be some larger landscaping of these questions, because then I think if it's not Spoonfuls who's recovering, hopefully somebody else can and will, but that good edible food isn't ever left behind, and we just have a knowledge as an industry of what's out there, and if it is being left behind, how come? That's a great thought.
Courtney, not to put you on the spot, but just curious if you have any perspective from the college and university perspective from Harvard, anything you would add from your perspective there?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think is hearing from the grocery stores too that we appreciate, obviously, as a shopper, you want them to take the milk off the shelf earlier, so when you get home, you have those days, you know. But then I think I was at, Heather can speak to it in more detail, but at the Recycling Works, we talked about wasted food and the whole thing about the dates and, what we think they mean. And so, wondering how we can move that stuff forward too, because that starts to get into we all question, right? Is this good? Is this bad? I mean, I, smell test, we all do that stuff, but I think a lot of that can help on all ends, right? And then on the food safety thing is super important too because of like with liability. And I know our dining services HUDs isn't at every academic building. We do have some outside partners, but they do a lot of those things that Rose was talking about too, with like planning for with like climate forward meals and reducing meat, and then how you even at a buffet or an event placing it out properly too, so you see the other, and also it's healthy, right? Because then you're filling your plate up with veggies or other stuff, and the meat is at the end or whatnot. So that's what a lot of work I know that they've been doing too, along with capturing a lot of what Rose said too. I don't have all the details of what HUDs is doing, but looking at what came back, but not being wasted. Because that's really important. And what can they recover to make new stuff? I think there's a really famous, I'm gonna get it wrong. It's some sort of bread pudding that they make. It's like it's like the best thing ever that we've had at like special events. Usually it's the winter breakfast for the campus services. We finally get something. It's very lovely. But they make this caramel bread pudding, and it's kind of made from kind of leftover stuff. And it's like somebody, like, I don't know the exact history, but somebody made it. And it was like, oh, we have stuff. And then it became like a hit that now they have to source for it a little bit too, which was kind of a funny story. But I think, yeah, hearing some of this information about, I had another point. Now I'm just breaking. I'll see what it was. It was the thing about the dates, and then I forgot. Anyways, but yeah, so all of this, kind of ties into a lot of different things because we do have obviously an institutional population, and folks are eating, but then also a lot of it's on the go, and that's the trickiest part too with capturing food if someone takes it away from a dining hall or just a retail operation. Back in my day in college, we had to eat it was bad one year because I broke my ankle and I was on crutches and I couldn't even get to the dining hall, and I couldn't get food because none of my friends could sneak it out for me. But having the ability where you can't take food from a dining hall has its pros and cons. But then you don't have people taking too much and walking away and then wasting it. Obviously we have compost containers in places, but as we know, people do really bad, with containers, whether it's recycling or compost, everything shows up in one bin, always the wrong one. But yeah, so it's great to see a lot of movement too at the grocery stores. It was great to hear.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Rup, go ahead, and then I was going to come back to my slides for a minute after that. Oh, you're on mute.
Thanks. Sorry about that. One last question for Joni at Spoonfuls. We heard about Artie's shrink rates. What about Spoonfuls? A lot of the food that's received, working with food banks, we found out maybe 10 to 20% is spoiled or unusable. So how about yours?
Yeah, so the beautiful and somewhat unique thing about Spoonfuls operations, I came out of the world of food banking, so I got to see it from that perspective, is that nothing is banked. So when our staff shows up at the store, while things are set aside, we actually right on site look through that product again, kind of ensure that it's usable, and then take it. So 100% of everything we distribute is actually delivered. From there, what we try to do through routine kind of follow up with each of our partners is trying to identify, was there anything, and most of the time the answer is no. Was there anything that we provided that they couldn't use? And occasionally we'll hear things like, you brought us turnips and our clientele doesn't know what to do with them. And so it often then becomes a conversation about, could we do a better job sourcing food for your program that your clients, for whatever reason, will better use and enjoy, as one thing. And then the other is sometimes we've had folks that will receive, and in particular this happens, I think, in the produce category, they'll receive something that's unfamiliar, and we'll be able to direct them to kind of recipe resources, cooking preparation resources to help them make better use of those things for their program. So the long and short is that while we don't know exactly what happens once those things are distributed, we're pretty confident that, and frankly, the need is so great that that food is quickly reaching people who could put it to good use on the other end.
Got it. Thank you.
One more question for you, Joni, in the chat. What materials or training is provided by Spoonfuls to donors? How do you work with donors to provide guidance?
Oh, so much. So at the point of onboarding, our programs team has a meeting where we talk through our date label guidance, which is the same guidance that the Greater Boston Food Bank uses. We provide magnets, training sheets that are department by department. So we have one for produce, one for, meat, and we go through and kind of give them these physical resources that they can kind of keep on hand to help guide the folks on their team about what's a good fit donation. And then a lot of our work is frankly relational. So like I said, that continual follow-up between our staff, who's often assigned to a route, they get to know the store partners on that route. A lot of conversations that take place after that point of onboarding. Like, if you'll remember from the beginning, here's what we talked about, here's what we're seeing, here's how we could do better, here's what else we could take. So we do a bit of that. And I'll say on the other side, question not asked, but one that's very important, is on the side of the organizational partners that we work with, the pantries, the meal programs that are receiving that food. To the earlier question about, what happens to it when it's distributed, they too receive somewhat similar resources at the point of onboarding, and then the same kind of continual follow-up. So it's a ongoing conversation about what Spoonfuls does from the very inception, so that we're not onboarding partners that if they see a bruised banana are going to scoff, and that could truly make use of what we're giving them. But also as new people come on board at either retail or nonprofit organizations that we work with, that they get kind of a refresher from our team. And I'm happy to share if it's useful afterwards. I can kick to you, John, our some of our date label guidelines, if that's useful for folks to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and I see the one more comment from Courtney in the chat around the stigma of food rescue and food pantries, especially around peer groups, and how to make that more accessible to all, set up more like a store, not so much as a charity. So thank you for that, Courtney. I'm going to bounce back a couple of slides to kind of close things out here. Okay, so where do we go from here? First off, I think what I would like to do is kind of post meeting here and offline. I'm just going to do some more outreach to groups maybe that weren't fully represented here today, just to get a few more perspectives about preventing food waste and food rescue and donations. So I'm going to do a little bit of that work offline. But then we want to, continue our work as part of our Organics Action Plan review. Some of the areas that we want to delve into more include collection from small to medium businesses, and I want to separate that from collection from residents because those are somewhat different groups. And then also another look. We spoke about these issues some in our last meeting in April, but talk a little bit more about where we're at with our infrastructure across composting, anaerobic digestion, animal feed, and intermediate processing and depackaging. I'm working to get a little bit more information together to inform that discussion prior to that, but we'll definitely want to discuss that more. And again, all of this is geared towards, a review and updating and revision of our Organics Action Plan. And in particular, and what we touched on at our last meeting, is where we going forward with our food waste disposal ban, including do we lower the threshold of that ban or eliminate that threshold? If so, how do we do that? Do we want to draw a commercial or residential distinction, things like that? So all of these discussions are geared in part to addressing that question and developing a recommendation by the end of the year about where to proceed in general with our work to reduce food waste, but also in particular a recommendation relative to our food waste disposal ban. So we'll be talking about that more in our upcoming meetings. I'm mindful that we're approaching the summer and we're approaching summer vacation months. So I'll be giving that some thought about when it makes sense to hold the next meeting. Sometimes we do okay in June, but July and August are typically not good months to have meetings or calls. So I think if we can't get to the point where we feel ready for another meeting in June, we might be looking ahead to September at this point. But we'll think about that more. I also just wanted to highlight some of the information resources, and I'll share these back out to our email list following the meeting. So these are just our general information around the Solid Waste Master Plan and MassDEP's work around food waste. We've shared these before, but I want to continue to share them. And then to note that we have a lot of resources around food waste prevention and donation in particular. The top two are Recycling Works resources, including the donation page has been recently updated and refreshed into a new format with, I think, a lot of easy to, haven't done a food waste pun yet, so easy to digest information about food donation and how businesses and institutions can either get started with food donation or improve a program. Also, the Recycling Works, the Massachusetts program, recently held their spring forum that was focused on food donation and rescue, and all the materials from that forum are now available online. So it's a really good resource. Some really interesting information was presented there, and all the presentations are there as well as the recording of the workshop. And then these are just number 4, here's a link, some links that we've shared about preventing food waste, and then just highlighting EPA's Too Good to Waste implementation guide and toolkit, which is another resource focused more on residential food waste. So I just wanted to share those resources. And as always, feel free to reach out to me at any point, and I'm happy to talk further. Email is the best way to start there, and I'm happy to schedule a call if folks are interested. So I will stop sharing one more time just to see if there's anything else people want to share in closing. Otherwise, we will wrap up, and we'll be in touch about our next steps going forward. All righty. So seeing nothing, thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for your time. And we'll continue to be in touch as we go. Thanks again, and have a good rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, John.